Glail rolled underneath the giant crackling fist and assessed his situation. The squad was in disarray, scattered and cut off by an unexpected assault from a Contemptor Talon bearing the elegant livery of the Blood Angels. He had witnessed the grisly demise of 4 of his fellow veterans. Against weapons so terrible, there was no coming back, and with a snarl, Glail sought to avenge his brothers and honour their actions. He slung his bolter, useless as it was against the thick plates of a Contempt-class chassis, and gripped the wound leather haft of his power maul with trembling hands. It was now or never. Glail had done well in avoiding death so far, but the odds were severely stacked against him, and his rapidly overheating body was exhausted fending off the twin fists of the Blood Angel's machine. It was small mercy that its ranged weapons were dry, but Glail was on his own now, and was pushing himself further than ever before in this melee. As the dreadnought began to turn on squealing gears, the veteran sergeant leapt towards the delicate, vulnerable mechanisms on the rear of the beast. Screaming an oath and summoning the dregs of his endurance, he swung his energized weapon at the back of the giant's right knee. Ceramite and plasteel buckled under the ferocity of his attack, and the dreadnought stumbled, horns blaring in outrage and anger. Glail pressed his attack, knowing that to allow any reprieve now would secure his doom. He struck again and again until the giant began to topple, helpless, into the scree and ruins that covered the battlefield. The dreadnought attempted to rise, but its leg was scrap. The once terrifying war machine was utterly helpless. Breathing heavily, Glail unclipped a melter bomb from the belt of a prone brother marine nearby and strode towards his struggling foe, priming the charge. He cautiously clambered up the thrashing Contemptor and attached to the device to the power generator. Leaping to the ground, he started to pace back into the fray, unholstering his bolter. As he slapped in a fresh clip and racked the slide, he felt the sensory assault of the melter charge wash over him from behind. Hello everyone, and welcome to Project Retrospective number 7. Today we're taking a closer look at Veteran Sergeant Glail of the 14th Legion. Now this chap leads a squad of Weapon Master vets who are across the board armed with either entirely power mauls, which goes tremendously well with rad grenades that can be run using the Reaping Rite of War that the 14th Legion have there at their disposal, or I've modelled it that they could also potentially count as power axes. So if I needed to take care of any sort of 2+ armor saves that the enemy can throw at me. So this guy I made a couple of years ago. Really quite happy with how the squad turned out as a whole, and I'll go into the parts that I used to make this guy and the squad in general, and maybe some of the things to look out for and resources that you could find to make your own squad of these guys. Largely it's just a couple of little tricks that I used on things like the backpack, the Anvilus pattern backpack, and things like the modelling chain to have his bolter slung over his shoulder, but I'll go into that in a little bit more detail further on in the video. So for starters, why did I make this guy? So again, I mentioned with my Legion champion, I had a game scheduled against Miles of Little Legend Studio, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to make this entire unit to run alongside the champion and Legion Herald, just to see if I could get a little bit more stuck in the close combat side of things with Death Guard. Now, generally speaking, as a Legion, they do best really in sort of mid-range. Okay, they have an awful lot of firepower that they can bring to bear. Things like Grave Wardens are absolutely excellent mid-range. They obviously have all the Legion support that they might need for long range, but close range, other than really Death Shroud, there isn't an enormous amount. Potentially, I mean, I guess you could talk about Contemptor Dreadnoughts, which I talk about in the fluff with this chap anyway. You could bring Contemptor Dreadnoughts into the fray, and I've done that quite a lot with my Mortificator and a Talon of Quartus Contemptors, which I think run tremendously well in close combat. But as an infantry unit, I think Weapon Master Vets are kind of where it's at, basically. Okay, they're nice and quick, nimble, easy to transport, and they aren't going to cost too much down the line. Certainly if you equip them with things like power mauls, which as aforementioned work tremendously well with rad grenades, which obviously for the first round of combat reduce your enemy's toughness by 1. So power mauls, which increase the wielder's strength to 6, work very well against that toughness 3, okay, doubling them out basically. So anyway, without further ado, I think I will begin chatting a little bit about the bits used to construct this guy, okay. So we'll start from the base. Again, it's another fantastic 32mm urban rubble base by Unreal Wargaming Studios. Make sure you hit them up, have a look at what they've got. Really amazing detailed bases which will work for a variety of different armies. So by all means, give them a look. And obviously that the base itself works itself very nicely into the fluff for Glail. Again, fighting that contemptor in the ruins of a city. So the legs, some of you will recognise as being Ashen Circle legs. So these are from the Word Bearers miniature range, and I've just filled in any details on the legs there with a mixture of green stuff and milliput, and just smoothed that down nicely. So there are no Legion specific icons on there, and it's obviously Mark III armor there as well. Okay, so the legs are Ashen Circle, and again throughout the course of this video I'll throw up some images of where I obtained parts for these kits as well. So there are quite a few different parts that I think worked rather well together, but it's just getting hold of them that might be the challenging bit overall. All right. So the upper half, so his upper torso, and the plates there that go in between his legs, that is from the Iron Hands Medusan Immortals kit. Okay. I've been a massive fan of this kit for the longest time, and I think that it works really well alongside the Ashen Circle legs. Now, granted, it takes a little bit of dedication to get 10-hole Ashen Circle and 10-hole in Medusan Immortals, but I was able to offset the initial cost of these parts by selling the spares, basically. And I just used Heresy Trading, which is a Facebook group, really good Facebook group, which is great for obtaining specific components and selling any excess that you might have down the line. Okay, so the upper half is the Medusan Immortals body. I believe this might even be the Sergeant body. And what I've done there is I've added some rivets, which are by a company called Grant Line. I've mentioned them before. They now no longer trade, so you'd be better off having a look at Zinge Industries rivets and just adding those on, and I thought that would add just a really nice bit of texture there overall. Okay, so I've added those rivets just to give him a little bit more of a frontline battle hardened look. Now the head, again, this is my Brucey bonus. If anyone can tell where the head is from, well done. It's not too difficult really, but it's just it's Khan the Betrayer. So this is the Forge World model. I've just removed his hair because, as I've always said, I don't think Barbarisians or Barbarans really should have any hair at all. They're from a death world, and they dabble so much in chemical weapons that they're probably all bald anyway. But I think that this worked really well. Extremely aggressive face, as you can imagine. I've also removed pretty much all of the butcher's nails on Khan's head as well, because obviously they don't really fit with the 14th Legion aesthetic per se, but I've left a couple there at the back there for just sort of sensory implants, sort of bits and bobs, if you will. Now the arms are both basic resin Mark III arms, nothing special there. The left hand is from the Night Lord's Nostroman chain glaives set, so they have a couple of sort of free hands, if you will, and I think that works quite nicely. So it's sort of looking after his bolter, but he's ready there just to grip the maul with two hands if required. And the right hand gripping that maul stroke axe, that is from the Raven Wing Command Squad set. Okay, so the Dark Angels Raven Wing Command Squad, that is the hand, the haft, the power pack, and I've essentially snipped off the top, which is basically a power pick, if you will, and I've gotten a Chaos Warriors, like a really old Chaos Warriors weapon there. Now there were really bad mold defects on these weapons, which is a bit of a shame. But I've cleaned them up as best as possible and whacked them on the top there. And I'm sure you'll agree they look like pretty gruesome weapons overall, capable of wreaking pretty savage damage against the puppets of the false emperor. So the shoulder pads, they are from the Space Marine Command Squad. I'm not sure if this is still an available kit, but I'll check out to see if there's any links or anything. But I'll definitely throw up an image of the box art so you know where to look. Not too difficult to get hold of overall. And the bolter is just a standard Phobos bolter with some very fine modelling chain used to sort of rest it over his shoulder there to sort of sort that out. So you want to be looking for modelling chain that has about 36 links, between 32 and 36 links per inch. Okay, now, I've mentioned this in one of my previous retrospective videos. This is important just to keep everything nicely in scale. Okay, so otherwise I think I really, it's very noticeable, put it this way, when you can see out of scale chain on models, and I think it's an offence that a lot of people perpetrate very readily. Okay, now for the backpack, I've taken the old, I think they're 2nd or 3rd edition Chaos Space Marine backpacks, the Anvilus style backpacks, which obviously have a rich history in the Horus Heresy as well. They were essentially there to stabilize Marines better in zero gravity or very low gravity war zones. Okay, so outside ships and on orbitals, things along those lines, because those little vents can be used just to give very temporary stabilization to the Marines as they fight in these slightly more challenging environments. So I've taken the core of a Mark III plastic backpack there, and I've chopped off the vents, and conversely I've chopped off the vents of an Anvilus and just cleaned them up as best possible and glued those on the side there, drilling holes to create, using the Green Stuff World tentacle or sort of roll maker to add that ribbed pipe work there, just connecting those together nicely so it looks like it's all as it should be. Okay, now the grenades are just standard plastic grenades. We've got a crack and a frag there, and the magazine clip is, I believe, also from the Medusan Immortals set. Really handy little addition there. Just I always try to make my models as WYSIWYG as possible, just so they have all the equipment they might need down the line. So, but there we go. Now, the only other addition I needed to, change I needed to make to this model, it's actually a very, very straightforward conversion. It's just those little armor panels on the belt, either side of that sort of chest piece. I've had to very gently cut out some thin plastic card, and I've glued those on there just to create that sort of seamless join. Okay. If you scroll back far enough into my Instagram history, you'll be able to see an unpainted version of this guy. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just slap up some images just for your ease of watching, just so you can see what I'm talking about there. Now, as it came, we're talking about the painting very quickly. This was kind of the first unit that I really started doing sort of airbrushing, but having a sort of higher contrast. Now, you'll very quickly be able to tell how I screwed this up, in as much as I'm only really spraying from one direction, whereas with later squads I've sprayed from 2 different directions, having 2 sources of light and 2 short sources of shadow. But with this, I've just sprayed it from the front. I don't think overall it looks too terrible, and you've got a nice gradient there, especially from front to back. But this could definitely be improved. I won't bother repainting these guys because I'm happy with them as they are. But this is also another unit where I hadn't yet started to do edge highlighting on the models. So I think edge highlighting is a massive tool that we have at our disposal as painters, and it really helps further that contrast down the line. So I used unidirectional airbrushing here, and I did not do any edge highlighting, and I also didn't pick out any of the soft armor in that black. I don't know if you guys will remember from a previous video, but that's also something that my friend Prometheus has always recommended down the line. However, with the rest of the techniques with this guy, pretty happy with how they turned out overall. I'm really quite happy with the battle damage, the little scrapes and scratches, especially on the shoulder pads, which have those lovely rounded details there overall. So, and the head, it's actually a recipe that a friend of mine, Rob, gave me. I'll link his profile below, but he runs a page called Medda's Miniatures, and I think that you're able to get a very realistic looking skin tone with relatively little effort, really, just using an airbrush and using inks as well, just to give that sort of livid purple colour at the back of the head there, which contrasts very nicely with the rest of the skin tones. Okay, but there we have it. So this is Veteran Sergeant Glail of the 14th Legion. Okay, any requests for other models, please mention them below. I'll do my absolute best to create as detailed a run through as possible when it comes to talking about these creations. Some will be unpainted, some will be completely done, and others will be certain levels in between. But there we go. So thanks again for watching. All comments and feedback and follows very much appreciated. Death to the false emperor.